Maladministration and bad governance is sort of at the order of the day here in South Africa. Almost every single government department in South Africa has consistently not received clean audits, if they even submit those audits on time, which most of them actually don't. And even when the money is actually spent, because that's all an audit really tells you. It tells you how much did you get in a budget, right? And how much of that money did you actually spend? And then more specifically, when we actually go and look at the state-owned enterprises of South Africa, that gets even worse, with most of them failing to submit their audits, getting no clean audits whatsoever, and almost all of them, by the way, with the exception of Telkom, there isn't a single state-owned enterprise in South Africa that is currently liquid. They're all losing money across the board. And that's interesting because Telkom is the only one that has competitors. There are multiple fiber optic companies in South Africa, all providing fiber internet connectivity. And across the board, OpenServe or Telkom has actually managed to rise to the occasion, making sure that their offerings are some of the best in the country. Everyone else competes only against themselves. They are completely insulated and protected from any competition within the market, and yet all of those are failing. If ever you needed actual evidence that market participation, market competition, and free markets is the way to go, I think the case study for Telkom is the best one to point to. Denel is the company that builds the military equipment of our country, and at one point in time, Denel was considered a world leader in specifically vehicle manufacturing. We had one of the greatest military vehicles ever created in the form of the Casper, and a bunch of other weapons, guns, and the like that Denel came up with that were actually really, really good. Denel, however, is a black pit of taxpayer money. Denel once again fails to submit annual reports despite billions in bailouts. Denel received a bailout of 10 billion rand from the government because, well, they still can't make any money. And we were told at the time that this money would stabilize Denel, and Denel would finally be able to make some money. They'd finally be able to build some weaponry and actually sell said weaponry. Except now we finally have Angie Motshekga, the Minister for Military Defense and Military Veterans, sending a letter to Parliament saying the entity has been unable to submit its annual financial statements to this office as the audit for the financial year 2024-2025 has not yet been finalized. The audit process is currently underway, and the external auditors anticipate that the audit will be completed by the end of September 2025. As a result, it will not be possible to meet the September 30th, 2025 deadline. The entity and I anticipate tabling the report to Parliament as soon as the audited financial statements and board resolutions are received and approved by my office. Why is it taking so long? Because they're not doing it throughout the year. They're not actually keeping book and record of everything that they're spending, everything that they're doing. And so now they're finally pushed to submit a report. And of course, things have changed a little. Up until last year, the end of last year, it was only the ANC that Denel had to answer to. Now, however, thanks to the GNU, they have to answer to people like the DA's MP Chris Hattingh, who apparently is very much fed up with how Denel has been acting by saying Denel has once again failed to table its annual report and audited financial statements. After 5 consecutive years without legally compliant financial reporting, this is no longer a delay, it's defiance. This chronic non-compliance persists despite more than 10.15 billion rand in bailouts since 2019 and an additional 4.4 billion rand government-guaranteed facility. Now, I want to sort of stress just how important this is from, I think, a national security perspective. Denel builds firearms. It builds weapons of war. Understanding what money goes to Denel, what money comes into Denel in terms of the sale of weaponry, but then also how that money is spent is paramount. Can you imagine if it were to come out that Denel has been arming militia groups all over South Africa or maybe all over Africa? Can you imagine if we were to find out that Denel is actually engaged in supplying weapons to Iran or to other terrorist organizations throughout the world? This is why you have these audits, so that you can actually see, hey, where the hell are you guys getting your money? Where is your money being spent? Now, it could just be that all of this is a result of corruption. And the reason we don't have the audited financial results for Denel for the last 5 years is because all of the money just sort of goes away, right? Everyone gets paid out and everyone makes a bunch of money. The problem is, if we don't know that for certain, that's already bad, right? It's already bad that the money is being stolen, but that would be significantly better than finding out that Denel has actually been funding and supplying military groups around the world, and it could land us in a lot of hot water. And I do think at this point you do have to start asking yourself, what the hell is Denel actually up to? Why won't they submit these results? And Chris Hutton goes on to say, South Africans were told these funds would stabilize Denel and restore governance. Instead, the public remains in the dark about how their money is being spent. Denel's conduct breaches the PFMA, specifically the obligation to submit annual reports and financial statements, and flouts Treasury's planning rules. Hutton said taxpayers have pumped over 10 billion rand in bailouts and a 4.4 billion rand government guarantee since 2019. Where did the money go? We still don't know, because Denel refuses to table the books. The DA will oppose any further funding to Denel. No report, no money, and a freeze on all recapitalizations, guarantees, and special support until Denel tables its overdue audited financials. South Africans don't owe Denel blank checks. Even the EFF's MP, Carl Niehaus, weighed in and said this is absolutely unacceptable and it cannot stand. And for me, I just keep coming back to this one fundamental question. If we don't know where the money goes, if we don't know what they actually spend the money on, and of course, when Denel finally builds these weapons of war, who do they sell them to? Without actual financial statements, there is no way for us to know any of that. And you have to start asking yourself, with an air of revolution in this country, as widespread as it is, in a country where a lot of people are fed up, not only with the government, but you also have politicians that do their damnedest to spread racial hatred and sort of racial distaste for each other in this country. It should be at the top of the list of priorities. If you're the ANC currently in government, there are three things that you want to hyper focus on. The first is to make sure that the police are as strong as is humanly possible. The next, make sure that the military is as strong as is humanly possible. And the third, make sure that your arms manufacturing wing isn't actually supplying weapons to militia groups. This should be at the front of every single politician's minds. This should be more important than anything else, because the last thing you want is a military uprising in your country funded and supplied by your own country. But of course, in South Africa, this is just more of the same, because there is so much corruption and because almost all of the government ministers are completely insulated from any questions that might be uncomfortable for them to answer. We probably will never get the answer to any of this, because this is exactly the playbook that Denel has followed for the last 5 years. They continuously say the report will be finished. We're still doing the report. We haven't got the report yet. And then finally they just go, never mind. What? Next year. Next year. First thing next year, we'll have that report for you on your desk. This is absolutely unacceptable, and it simply cannot stand. If you like, if you dislike. And as always, massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons, as well as the YouTube channel members, for continuing to support this channel and making it possible for me to cover stories that otherwise most people probably don't care so much about. I really appreciate your support. Please consider hitting that like button, as I said, and also leaving a comment, because engagement truly matters. As always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.